I stood on my own front porch, my finger pressing the doorbell for the third time. No one answered. I tried the key in the lock. It didn't work. Through the window, I could see my daughter Beth and her husband Kevin moving around inside, ignoring me completely as if I weren't standing right there. I'd only been gone for 2 weeks visiting my sister, and somehow I had become a stranger at my own home. "Beth, open the door," I called out, knocking harder. Finally, the door opened. Beth stood there with an expression I'd never seen before, cold, distant, almost smug. "Mom, we need to talk," she said, not moving to let me in. "What's going on? Why doesn't my key work?" I asked, trying to step past her. Kevin appeared behind her. "Margaret, the locks have been changed. This house is ours now." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. The house I had paid off over 30 years? The house where I had raised my children after their father died? The house that contained everything I owned? "What are you talking about? This is my house," I said, my voice rising. Beth looked at me with pity that didn't reach her eyes. "Not anymore, Mom. We have the papers to prove it. But let me back up and tell you how this nightmare began, because it started 6 months earlier when I made what I now realize was the biggest mistake of my life. If you've ever been betrayed by family, please hit the like button and subscribe. This is a story about justice that you won't want to miss. 6 months before that terrible day on my porch, my life had been peaceful. I'm Margaret Wilson, 68 years old, and a widow for the past 12 years. My husband Robert had left me with a good life insurance policy and a fully paid-off 3-bedroom house in a nice neighborhood where property values had more than doubled since we bought it in 1989. I had raised 3 children in that house: Beth, my oldest at 42, Michael, who's 39, and Jenny, my youngest at 36. Michael and Jenny had moved to different states with their own families, but Beth and her husband Kevin had always stayed close by. Too close, as it turned out. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Beth called me. I was sitting in my garden enjoying the roses I had planted with Robert all those years ago. "Mom, I have the most exciting news," Beth's voice bubbled through the phone. "What's that, dear?" I asked, smiling at her enthusiasm. Beth had always been my most emotional child, quick to excitement and equally quick to tears. "Kevin got laid off from his job." I frowned in confusion. "How is that exciting news?" "Because," she continued breathlessly, "we've been talking about starting our own business for years, and this is the perfect opportunity. It's a sign from the universe." Kevin had worked in sales for a furniture company for about 8 years. He was charming and talkative, but never seemed to advance much in his career. They had always rented apartments, never quite managing to save enough for a down payment on a house despite both of them working full-time. "What kind of business?" I asked, feeling the first stirrings of concern. "A coffee shop. You know how much Kevin loves coffee, and I've always wanted to work for myself instead of that awful accounting firm." I did know how much Kevin loved expensive coffee. I wasn't sure that qualified him to run a coffee shop. "That sounds ambitious," I said carefully. "Do you have a business plan? Financing?" There was a pause. "Well, that's actually why I'm calling. We were wondering if we could come over for dinner tonight to talk about it. We have some ideas we'd love to share with you." That dinner changed everything. I had made pot roast, Beth's favorite since childhood. She and Kevin arrived with a bottle of my favorite wine and a thick folder of papers. Their enthusiasm was contagious as they laid out their dream, a cozy coffee shop in the growing arts district downtown, serving specialty drinks and pastries. "We found the perfect location," Kevin said, showing me pictures on his phone. "The rent is reasonable, and the area is really up and coming." But we need startup capital, Beth added, her eyes shining. About $75,000 to cover the first and last month's rent, renovations, equipment, supplies, and enough operating costs to get us through the first 6 months. I nearly choked on my wine. $75,000? That's a lot of money. They exchanged glances. We know, Mom, Beth said, reaching for my hand. But we've done the research. Coffee shops that make it past the first year have an amazing success rate, and we'll pay you back with interest. We've already applied for small business loans, Kevin added, but without collateral, the banks are hesitant. I thought about my savings. I had about $120,000 set aside, my emergency fund, and what I hoped would help my grandchildren with college someday. It was a lot to risk. I don't know, I began. Mom, Beth said, her eyes filling with tears. This is our dream. After all those years Dad worked for someone else, wouldn't he have wanted us to take a chance on ourselves, to build something of our own? Using her father against me, Beth knew exactly how to push my buttons. Let me think about it, I said finally. They left their business plan with me, and I spent the next week going over it, even showing it to my friend Harold, who had owned a hardware store before he retired. He pointed out some overly optimistic projections, but said overall it wasn't terrible. When Beth called again, I agreed to help them, but with conditions. I'll give you $50,000, I told them, not $75,000. And I want paperwork drawn up making it an official loan with a payment schedule. Beth squealed with delight. Thank you, Mom. You're the best. Don't worry about the paperwork. Kevin's cousin is a lawyer. He'll draw everything up properly. I should have insisted on my own lawyer. That was my first mistake. Over the next few months, I got caught up in Beth and Kevin's excitement. The coffee shop, which they named Daily Grind, started taking shape. I found myself driving downtown several times a week to see the progress on the renovations. Kevin had apparently discovered hidden talents as a carpenter, building beautiful countertops and shelving from reclaimed wood. Beth was learning the art of coffee making from a consultant they'd hired, mastering the espresso machine and creating signature drinks. We couldn't have done any of this without you, Mom, Beth told me one afternoon as we painted the walls a warm caramel color. You've given us the chance to change our lives. I felt proud to be helping my daughter pursue her dreams. Robert had always been so supportive of our children's ambitions, and I felt like I was honoring his memory by doing the same. But the $50,000 wasn't the end of it. 2 months in, with the opening just weeks away, Kevin called me in a panic. Margaret, we've hit a snag. The health inspector is requiring an upgrade to the ventilation system that wasn't in our original budget. It's going to cost another $8,000. I hesitated. That's a lot of money, Kevin. I know. But we're so close. Everything else is on track. The supplier deals are set up. We've hired 2 baristas, and we've already got a small following on social media. We can't stop now. I dipped into my savings again. The next month, it was an unexpected issue with the plumbing, then specialized equipment that cost more than anticipated. Each time I reminded them about the paperwork for the original loan, and each time they assured me it was being handled. By the time Daily Grind opened its doors 4 months after that initial dinner, I had invested just over $70,000. The paperwork still hadn't materialized, but I trusted my daughter. After all, we were family. The grand opening was a success. The place looked beautiful, and Beth and Kevin had managed to generate enough buzz that customers lined up down the block to try their special Founders Blend coffee. A toast to Margaret, Kevin said at the small party they held after closing on opening day. Our angel investor and the best mother-in-law a guy could ask for. Everyone raised their glasses. Beth, Kevin, the 2 young baristas they'd hired, and a few friends who had helped with the final preparations. I felt a warm glow of satisfaction. This was what family was all about, supporting each other, helping dreams come true. If only I had known what was coming next. I agreed to visit Jenny for 2 weeks. Before leaving, I made copies of all my important documents and put them in a safe deposit box at my bank, along with my jewelry and other small valuables. I didn't tell Beth I was leaving, just left a message saying I was visiting Jenny and would be back in 2 weeks. That was my second mistake, leaving my house unattended. But I never imagined what would happen next. Now back to that terrible moment on my front porch, locked out of my own home with my daughter telling me the house was no longer mine. "What papers?" I demanded. "Let me in right now, Beth. This is ridiculous." Kevin stepped forward, putting his arm around Beth's shoulders in a protective gesture. "Margaret, we don't want a scene. The neighbors will hear." "I don't care if the whole neighborhood hears. This is my house." Beth sighed dramatically. "Mom, please calm down. We can explain everything if you'll just be reasonable." The condescension in her voice was infuriating, but I forced myself to take a deep breath. Making a scene wouldn't help if they really did have some kind of paperwork, however fraudulent it might be. "Fine. Let me in and explain." They stepped aside, and I entered my own home like a guest. Immediately, I noticed changes. My living room furniture had been rearranged. Several of my decorative items were missing, replaced by modern pieces I didn't recognize. There were boxes stacked in the corner. "What's going on here? Where are my things?" "Have a seat, Mom," Beth said, gesturing to what had once been my favorite armchair. "We've made some changes while you were gone." I remained standing. "I can see that. Explain." Kevin cleared his throat. "Margaret, do you remember signing power of attorney paperwork when we set up the coffee shop loan?" "I never signed any power of attorney, Kao," I said firmly. "The only thing I was waiting for was loan repayment paperwork, which you never provided." They exchanged glances. "Actually, you did," Beth said, pulling a folder from a drawer. "It was included in the business paperwork, see? That's your signature." She handed me a document with what appeared to be my signature at the bottom. It granted Beth durable power of attorney over my financial and property affairs. "This is forged," I said immediately. "I never signed this." "Mom, don't be ridiculous," Beth said, her voice hardening. "You signed it. You probably just don't remember." "Are you suggesting I'm losing my memory? I'm 68, not 98. I would never sign over control of my finances to anyone." Kevin stepped in, his voice smooth and reasonable. "Margaret, you've been under a lot of stress lately. With the coffee shop investment and your age, it's natural for details to slip your mind." "My age? I'm perfectly capable of managing my own affairs." "The bank didn't think so," Beth said quietly. "When they called about the equity line of credit, they were concerned about potential elder financial abuse. That's why we stepped in, to protect you." I stared at her in disbelief. "You're claiming you tried to take out a loan in my name to protect me from financial abuse? That's rich, Beth." "It wasn't in your name," Kevin interjected. "It was using Beth's power of attorney, perfectly legal." "Except I never granted power of attorney. This document is a forgery." Beth's face hardened. "Prove it." Those 2 words told me everything I needed to know about what my daughter had become. I felt sick to my stomach, but forced myself to stay calm. "Where are the rest of my things?" I asked, noticing more and more missing items as I looked around. "We've been organizing," Beth said vaguely. "Some things are in storage." "And these boxes?" I asked, pointing to the stack in the corner. "Just some of your old stuff we thought you might want to take to a smaller place. Mom, at your age, this house is too much for you to maintain. So not only are you stealing my house, you're kicking me out. Kevin stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. No one's kicking you out immediately. We're just thinking of your best interests. A nice senior apartment would be much more manageable for you. We've found some lovely places, Beth added brightly, as if we were discussing vacation options. There's one with activities and a shuttle service only 20 minutes from here. How generous of you to find me a place to live after stealing my home, I said, my voice shaking with anger. And how exactly am I supposed to pay for this apartment? With the money you've already taken from me for the coffee shop? Beth at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. We thought we could help with the rent until we figure things out with the coffee shop. The coffee shop that I invested $70,000 in? How is that going, by the way? They exchanged another glance. There have been some unexpected challenges, Kevin said carefully. Market fluctuations, supply chain issues. You know how business can be. No, I don't know, because you two have been keeping me in the dark while apparently planning to steal my house out from under me. Mom, that's not fair, Beth protested. We're trying to help you. By changing my locks, by forging my signature, by moving my things without my permission. That's not help, Beth. That's elder abuse. Kevin's demeanor changed instantly. The reasonable facade dropped, and his eyes grew cold. Be very careful about throwing around accusations like that, Margaret. Or what? You'll throw me out of my own house? Seems like you're already doing that. Beth stood up, her face flushed. Mom, you're being hysterical. Maybe you should go stay with a friend tonight. We can talk when you're calmer. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm not leaving my own house. It's not just your house anymore, Kevin said flatly. According to the deed, it now belongs to Beth, with a life estate for you, meaning you can live here until you need more care, which, judging by your behavior today, might be sooner than we thought. What deed? I never transferred my house to Beth. The paperwork says otherwise, he replied smugly. Maybe your memory really is slipping. I looked at my daughter, searching for any sign of the loving child I had raised. All I saw was a stranger, cold and calculating. Beth, why? Why would you do this to me? For a moment something flickered in her eyes. Guilt, perhaps, or shame. But it was quickly replaced by determination. It's for the best, Mom. You'll see eventually. The coffee shop needs this investment to survive, and this way, the house stays in the family. The family? I laughed bitterly. You mean you and Kevin? What about Michael and Jenny? What about my grandchildren who might have inherited this house? Someday? Beth waved her hand dismissively. Michael and Jenny moved away. They don't care about this house. But they care about their mother being treated fairly. I pulled out my phone. I'm calling the police. Kevin stepped forward quickly. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Are you threatening me now? Not at all. I'm simply pointing out that you have no proof of anything illegal. We have signed documents. If you call the police, all you'll do is create a family scene that might end with you being evaluated for mental competency. The casual cruelty of his words took my breath away. I looked at Beth, waiting for her to defend me, to say this had gone too far. She said nothing, just looked at the floor. I put my phone back in my purse. I see. Well, since this is supposedly still my home for now, I'll be staying in my bedroom. Actually, Beth said hesitantly, we've converted your bedroom into an office. We thought you'd be more comfortable in the guest room. It was the final straw. You've moved me out of my own bedroom without even asking? Mom, please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. I stared at them both. these strangers wearing the faces of people I thought I loved. "I need some air," I said finally, turning toward the door. "Don't forget your new key," Kevin said, holding out a single key. We had to change the security system too, so the code is now 1234. How generous of them to give me a key to my own house and tell me the security code they'd changed without my permission. I took the key without a word and walked out. Once outside, I sat in my car, tears streaming down my face. I felt violated, betrayed, and utterly alone. How had my own daughter turned into someone who could do this to me? I texted Jenny. They changed the locks, claiming they own the house now. Need help. Her response was immediate. Call the police. But I hesitated. What if Kevin was right? What if they really did have paperwork with my signature, forged or otherwise? What if calling the police only led to more humiliation? I needed to think, and I needed help from someone who understood legal matters. With shaking hands, I scrolled through my contacts and found the number for Harold's son, David, who worked as a paralegal. "David, it's Margaret Wilson. I'm in trouble and I need advice. If you've ever been in a situation where you felt completely powerless, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear how you handled it. Sometimes sharing our stories helps us realize we're not alone." I met David at a coffee shop. Not Daily Grind, of course, but a chain place on the other side of town. As Harold's son, he had known me since he was a child, and his face creased with concern as I told him what had happened. "Mrs. Wilson, this sounds like a clear case of elder abuse and fraud," he said when I finished. "You need to contact the police and an elder law attorney immediately." "But what if they really do have paperwork with my signature?" I asked. "Kevin said it would just be my word against theirs." "That's not entirely true," David said thoughtfully. "If they forged your signature, a forensic document examiner could likely prove it. And if they've been moving your possessions without permission, that's theft." "I don't want to get Beth arrested," I admitted. "She's still my daughter, despite everything." David's expression softened. "I understand. But you need to protect yourself. First, we need to find out exactly what legal documents they claim to have. How do I do that? You request copies, in writing. If they refuse, that strengthens your case for fraud. Also, we need to check the property records at the county clerk's office to see if any deed transfers have been filed. He helped me draft a formal letter requesting copies of all legal documents bearing my signature, particularly any power of attorney or property transfers. We also created a detailed inventory of items I had noticed missing from my home. "What about tonight?" I asked as we finished. "I don't want to go back there, but it's my house." "Stay with a friend for now," David advised. "Document everything. Take photos of any changes they've made to the house. Record conversations if legal in your state. Build your case." I nodded, grateful for his help. "Thank you, David. I feel less helpless now." "One more thing," he added as we stood to leave. "Check your credit report immediately. If they've forged your signature once, they may have opened credit cards or loans in your name." That night I stayed with my friend Patricia, who was outraged on my behalf. "I never liked that, Kevin," she declared, as she made up her guest room for me. "Always had shifty eyes." The next morning, David and I met at the county clerk's office. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with sympathetic eyes, helped us search for any recent filings related to my property. "Here we go," she said, pulling up a document on her screen. "Quitclaim deed filed 2 weeks ago, transferring property from Margaret Wilson to Elizabeth Carter, with a life estate reserved for the grantor." My heart sank. "Can I see it?" She printed a copy, and I examined the signature. It looked like mine, but I knew with absolute certainty I had never signed it. I didn't sign this, I told David. They forged my signature. We'll need an expert to confirm that, he said. But this is good evidence. The timing is suspicious. Filed exactly when you were away visiting your daughter. Our next stop was my bank, where I spoke with the manager about checking my accounts. To my horror, I discovered that $15,000 had been withdrawn from my savings account the previous week, after I'd left for Jenny's, but before I returned. Did I authorize this withdrawal? I asked the manager. He checked the records. It was processed using your debit card and PIN at the branch on Main Street. That's impossible. I was in Arizona, and my debit card was with me the whole time. The manager frowned. Let me check something. After a few keystrokes, he looked up. The withdrawal was actually made by Elizabeth Carter, using a power of attorney document we have on file. May I see that document? He retrieved it from their records. Like the deed, it bore a reasonable facsimile of my signature, but I had never signed it. This is a forgery, I said firmly. I never signed any power of attorney, especially not one allowing access to my accounts. The manager's expression grew serious. Mrs. Wilson, if you're saying this document is fraudulent, we need to freeze your accounts immediately and file a report. Do it, I said with more confidence than I felt. By that afternoon, I had frozen all my accounts, filed a police report for forgery and fraud, and scheduled an appointment with an elder law attorney David had recommended. I also called Jenny and Michael, updating them on what I had discovered. I'm coming home, Jenny declared. Today. Michael says he'll fly in tomorrow. You don't have to do that, I protested. Yes, we do, Mom. This is serious. Beth has gone too far. As I hung up, I felt a mixture of emotions. Relief that my other children were coming to help. Sadness that it had come to this. And a growing anger at the betrayal. That evening, I returned to my house with Patricia for moral support. This time, I took photos of everything. The rearranged furniture, the missing items, the boxes in the corner, and the converted bedroom. Beth and Kevin seemed surprised by my calm demeanor. Mom, did you think about what we discussed? Beth asked cautiously. Yes, I did. In fact, I've been doing a lot of thinking and research today. I'd like copies of all the legal documents you claim I signed. Kevin's eyes narrowed. Why? Because they're my documents, allegedly with my signature. I have a right to see them. We don't have to give you anything, he snapped. Kevin, Beth warned, shooting him a look. Mom, of course we can provide copies. We have nothing to hide. Wonderful. I'll wait while you make them. Reluctantly, Beth went to the office, my former bedroom, and returned with several papers. I examined each one carefully, taking photos with my phone when they weren't looking. Thank you, I said, keeping my voice neutral. By the way, did either of you withdraw $15,000 from my savings account last week? Their faces told me everything I needed to know. That was an emergency business expense, Kevin said quickly, completely authorized under the power of attorney. I see. And my furniture? The items missing from the living room and my bedroom? Beth shifted uncomfortably. Just in storage, Mom. We thought the house could use updating if we're going to eventually sell it. Eventually sell it? So you're not just taking my house, you're planning to sell it out from under me? Not while you're alive, Kevin said, as if that made it better. Your life estate guarantees that. How considerate, I replied dryly. And the coffee shop? How is that doing, really? They exchanged glances again. There have been some setbacks, Beth admitted. The location isn't generating the foot traffic we expected. We might need to relocate. With my $15,000 and my house as collateral for more loans? Mom, you're being dramatic, Beth said, her voice hardening. We're trying to build a family business. something that could support all of us, including you in your retirement. By stealing from me? By forging my signature? By taking over my home? Kevin stepped forward, his patience clearly wearing thin. Margaret, I think you should leave now. You're obviously not in a reasonable state of mind. Patricia, who had been silent until now, spoke up. She's not leaving. This is her house. If anyone should leave, it's you two. And who are you to get involved in family business? Kevin demanded. I'm the witness, who's going to testify that Margaret never signed those documents, because she was with me the day this power of attorney is dated, planning my grandson's birthday party. I stared at Patricia in surprise. I had forgotten that detail. Beth's face paled. That's not possible. The notary confirmed her signature. Then the notary is either lying or didn't actually witness the signing, Patricia said firmly. Either way, that's fraud. Kevin's expression darkened. Get out, both of you, now, or I'll call the police. I stood my ground. Go ahead, call them. I already filed a police report this morning for forgery and fraud. I'm sure they'd be interested in hearing your side of the story. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in Kevin's eyes. Beth looked from him to me, her face crumpling. Mom, please. We were just trying to protect your assets. For the family. No, Beth, you were trying to steal from me, and now you've been caught. Over the next week, with Jenny and Michael now in town, we built an ironclad case against Beth and Kevin. The evidence was overwhelming. First, we met with the elder law attorney, Sylvia Hernandez, who immediately filed for an emergency injunction to prevent Beth and Kevin from accessing any more of my assets or removing anything else from my home. What they've done is textbook elder financial abuse, Ms. Hernandez told us. Unfortunately, I see cases like this all too often, though usually not perpetrated by the victim's own children. Michael, always the most business-minded of my children, hired a forensic document examiner who confirmed that the signatures on both the power of attorney and the quitclaim deed were forgeries, skilled ones, but forgeries nonetheless. The pressure patterns and letter formations are inconsistent with your mother's known signatures, the examiner explained, showing us magnified images. Whoever did this had samples of her signature to copy, but couldn't replicate her natural hand movements. Jenny, meanwhile, had convinced the bank to provide security footage from the day the $15,000 was withdrawn. The video clearly showed Kevin at the counter, presenting paperwork to a teller who knew neither of us personally. With a forged power of attorney, he was able to access your accounts, Ms. Hernandez explained. The bank should have verified with you directly, especially for such a large withdrawal, but many banks don't follow proper protocols. We also discovered through checking my credit report that Beth and Kevin had opened 2 credit cards in my name and maxed them out, nearly $30,000 in charges for things like high-end electronics, furniture, and, most tellingly, equipment for the coffee shop. They were using you as their personal ATM, Michael said, his face grim as he scrolled through the list of charges. This isn't just poor judgment, Mom. This is criminal. Perhaps the most damning evidence came from a surprising source, one of the baristas from Daily Grind. Jenny had gone to the coffee shop, pretending to be a customer, and struck up a conversation with Zoe, the young woman who had been there since opening day. When Zoe heard I was your daughter, she pulled me aside, Jenny told us later. She said the shop has been struggling from day one. Kevin and Beth have been taking cash from the register, not recording all sales for tax purposes, and telling the staff they can't afford raises while showing up in new clothes and talking about house renovations. Zoe had provided Jenny with copies of the real financial statements for the coffee shop, which showed it was deeply in debt and nowhere near the success Beth and Kevin had been claiming. They told their suppliers and employees that they were waiting for an investor to solve their cash flow problems, Jenny explained. I think that investor was supposed to be you again, Mom, through the home equity line of credit they tried to take out in your name. We also discovered, through careful examination of my home, that several valuable items were missing. Jewelry that had belonged to my mother, a collection of rare books Robert had inherited from his father, and even the good silver we had received as wedding gifts. Patricia helped me create a detailed inventory of everything that was gone. Do you think they sold these things? Patricia asked as we worked. I don't know, I admitted, but I intend to find out. By the end of the week, we had assembled enough evidence for Ms. Hernandez to proceed with both civil and criminal complaints. We have 3 options, she explained during a meeting with me, Michael, and Jenny. First, we can pursue criminal charges for forgery, fraud, and elder abuse. This would likely result in arrest warrants for both Beth and Kevin. I flinched at the thought of my daughter in handcuffs. Second, she continued, we can file civil suits to reclaim your property and financial damages, which would be less severe but still create a legal record of their actions. And the third option? Michael asked. We attempt mediation. We present them with the evidence and offer a settlement agreement that would restore your mother's property and assets without criminal charges, provided they comply fully and immediately. I looked at my children. What do you think? They should be in jail, Michael said firmly. What they did wasn't just wrong. It was calculated and cruel. Jenny was more hesitant. I hate what they did, Mom, but Beth is still our sister, and jail time would affect her for the rest of her life. I understood both perspectives. Part of me wanted Beth and Kevin to face serious consequences for their betrayal, but another part, the mother who had kissed Beth's skinned knees and celebrated her accomplishments, couldn't bear the thought of being responsible for sending her to prison. Let's try mediation first, I decided. If they refuse to cooperate fully, then we can pursue the other options. Ms. Hernandez nodded. I think that's wise. We'll set up a meeting for tomorrow. In the meantime, I've arranged for a locksmith to meet us at your house in an hour to change the locks back. The emergency injunction gives us the authority to do that. As we left her office, I felt a mixture of determination and sadness. The evidence was clear. My own daughter had conspired to steal my home and drain my finances. The coffee shop that I had so generously helped fund was failing, and instead of being honest with me, they had resorted to fraud and theft. You know the worst part? I told Michael as we drove to meet the locksmith. If they had just been honest about the coffee shop struggling, I probably would have helped them anyway. They didn't need to steal from me. Michael shook his head. That's what makes this so inexcusable, Mom. They chose to betray you instead of just asking for help. I keep wondering where I went wrong with Beth, I admitted. What did I do to make her think this was acceptable? You didn't do anything wrong, he said firmly. Beth and Kevin made their choices. This isn't your fault. I wished I could believe him. When we arrived at my house, Beth's car was in the driveway. Michael tensed. Do you want me to handle this? He asked. No, I said, gathering my courage. This is my house. I need to do this. We found Beth in the kitchen, sorting through drawers. She froze when she saw us. Mom, she said, her voice uncertain. I didn't know you were coming by. It's my house, Beth. I don't need an appointment. She glanced at Michael, then back to me. Look, about the other day. Save it, Michael interrupted. We know everything. The forged documents, the stolen money, the credit cards, all of it. Beth's face drained of color. It's not what you think. Then what is it? I asked. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you and Kevin tried to steal my house and my money through fraud and forgery. She started to cry, those same tears I'd seen all her life whenever she was caught doing something wrong. We were desperate, Mom. The coffee shop is failing. We've got loans we can't repay. Kevin said it would just be temporary until we got back on our feet. So you decided to forge my signature and steal my house? My voice shook with anger. You couldn't just talk to me honestly? You wouldn't have understood. You would have just lectured us about business plans and responsibility. Instead, you chose to commit crimes, Michael said coldly. Multiple felonies, Beth. Do you understand that? Her tears turned to anger. Oh, here comes perfect Michael to judge everyone else. You have no idea what it's like struggling to start a business while you're sitting pretty with your corporate job. Don't deflect, I said sharply. This isn't about Michael. It's about what you and Kevin have done. The sound of a vehicle pulling up interrupted us. Through the window, I saw the locksmith arriving, followed shortly by Kevin's car. What's going on? Beth demanded, noticing the locksmith's van. Who is that? That's the locksmith who's going to change my locks back, I said. And here's the emergency injunction giving me the right to do so. I handed her the court order. She glanced at it, her face contorting with rage. You went to court against me? Your own daughter? You left me no choice, Beth. You stole from me. Kevin burst through the door, immediately assessing the situation. What's happening here? Your little scheme is over, Michael told him. We know everything. The forgeries, the stolen money, the credit cards, all of it. Kevin's face hardened. You have no proof of anything. Actually, we do, I said calmly. The forensic document examiner has confirmed the signatures are forgeries. The bank has provided video of you withdrawing money from my account. We have the credit card statements showing charges for the coffee shop made in my name. And we have testimony from your employee Zoe about the real state of the coffee shop's finances, Michael added. Kevin's expression turned ugly. You're bluffing. We're meeting with the district attorney tomorrow, I lied, watching his reaction. Elder abuse is taken very seriously these days. The color drained from Kevin's face. He turned to Beth. Did you tell them anything? What did you say to them? Nothing. They just showed up with some court order about changing the locks. The locksmith approached the door, looking uncomfortable with the tension. Ma'am, I'm here to change the locks as requested. Go ahead, I authorized. All the locks, please. Kevin stepped forward aggressively. You can't do this. We live here now. No, you don't, Michael said, stepping between Kevin and the locksmith. This house belongs to my mother, and you two are trespassing. We have paperwork that says otherwise, Kevin insisted. Forged paperwork, I corrected him, which is now evidence in a criminal investigation. Beth began to sob again, but I had seen this act too many times to be moved by it anymore. Mom, please don't do this. Where will we go? What about all our things? You mean my things that you moved without permission? Or your things that you bought with stolen money and fraudulent credit cards? Kevin grabbed Beth's arm. Let's go. Now. We need to talk to our lawyer. You might want to make that a criminal defense attorney, Michael suggested coldly. As they headed for the door, I called after them. By the way, we're meeting with Ms. Hernandez tomorrow at 2 p.m. to discuss settlement terms. If you want to avoid criminal charges, I suggest you be there. Kevin practically dragged Beth out the door. As their car screeched away, I felt my knees buckle. Michael caught me before I could fall. You did great, Mom, he said, helping me to a chair. Really great. But it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like my heart was breaking all over again. The locksmith worked quickly, changing all the locks and providing me with new keys. As he finished, Jenny arrived with Patricia, both carrying grocery bags. "We thought you might need some comfort food," Jenny explained, unpacking homemade casseroles and Patricia's famous apple pie. "And moral support," Patricia added, squeezing my shoulder. "How did it go?" I recounted the confrontation while they prepared dinner. Talking about it helped release some of the tension that had built up inside me. "The look on Kevin's face when you mentioned the district attorney," Michael chuckled. "Priceless." "I shouldn't have lied about that," I said. "It wasn't entirely a lie," Jenny pointed out. "Ms. Hernandez did say criminal charges were an option if mediation fails." "Do you think they'll show up tomorrow?" Patricia asked. "Kevin will," Michael predicted. "He's a survivor. He'll want to know exactly what evidence we have and what deal we're offering before he decides whether to run or fight." "And Beth?" Jenny asked softly. I sighed. "I don't know anymore. I thought I knew my daughter, but now—" That night, after everyone else had gone to bed, I sat alone in my living room, still rearranged with furniture I hadn't chosen, and looked through old photo albums, pictures of Beth as a little girl with missing front teeth, as a teenager in her prom dress, as a young woman on her wedding day. Where had that daughter gone? Had the woman who tried to steal my home been there all along, hidden behind the smiles in these photographs? The next morning, I began the process of reclaiming my space. With Michael and Jenny's help, we moved furniture back where I wanted it, unpacked the boxes of my belongings they had so callously packed away, and made a list of items still missing. "Some of these might be in their apartment," Jenny suggested as we cataloged the missing items. "We should add that to the settlement demands. Return of all property." "If they haven't already sold it," Michael said grimly. By noon, my home was starting to feel like mine again, though the violation of having my personal space invaded and rearranged left an uneasy feeling I couldn't shake. At 1:30, we left for Ms. Hernandez's office, none of us certain whether Beth and Kevin would actually show up. Ms. Hernandez's conference room felt tense as we waited. Michael paced by the window while Jenny flipped through her notes. I sat still, hands folded in my lap, mentally preparing for whatever might happen next. At exactly 2 p.m., Ms. Hernandez's assistant announced, "Mr. and Mrs. Carter have arrived with their attorney." They filed in silently. Kevin looked composed but wary, dressed in a business suit as if for an important meeting. Beth looked terrible, eyes red-rimmed, hair hastily pulled back, wearing a simple dress that seemed to hang on her frame. Behind them came a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses who introduced himself as James Watson, their attorney. "Thank you all for coming," Ms. Hernandez began once everyone was seated. "We're here to discuss a potential settlement agreement regarding several serious allegations against Elizabeth and Kevin Carter. My clients are prepared to listen to your proposal," Mr. Watson said stiffly. "However, they maintain that many of these allegations are exaggerated or based on misunderstandings." Michael snorted in disbelief, but Ms. Hernandez silenced him with a look. "Let me be clear about what isn't in dispute," she said, opening a folder. "We have confirmed forgeries of Margaret Wilson's signature on a power of attorney document and a quitclaim deed. We have video evidence of unauthorized bank withdrawals. We have credit card statements showing accounts fraudulently opened in Mrs. Wilson's name, and we have financial records from Daily Grind showing the business is failing and has been since shortly after opening." She laid out copies of each document on the table. Beth wouldn't meet my eyes, but Kevin maintained his composed facade. "These actions constitute elder abuse, fraud, forgery, and identity theft. All serious crimes with potential prison sentences," Ms. Hernandez continued. "Mrs. Wilson has authorized me to offer a settlement agreement as an alternative to criminal prosecution. Mr. Watson leaned forward. What terms are you proposing? Ms. Hernandez slid a document across the table. First, immediate rescission of the fraudulent quitclaim deed, restoring full ownership to Mrs. Wilson. Second, full repayment of all stolen funds and fraudulent credit card charges, approximately $45,000 total. Third, return of all property removed from Mrs. Wilson's home without permission. Fourth, a legally binding agreement to cease all contact with Mrs. Wilson unless she initiates it. That's ridiculous, Kevin burst out. We can't possibly pay back $45,000 immediately. The business isn't— Sell it, Michael interrupted, or get another loan, or declare bankruptcy. I don't care how you do it, but you will pay back every penny you stole from my mother. And the no-contact provision is extreme, Mr. Watson added. Mrs. Carter is Mrs. Wilson's daughter. Family relationships were destroyed when they tried to steal her house, Jenny finished for him. This isn't a typical family disagreement. This is criminal conduct against a family member. Throughout this exchange, Beth remained silent, staring at her hands in her lap. I found myself watching her, looking for any sign of remorse or understanding. What's the alternative if we don't agree? Mr. Watson asked. Criminal charges, Miss Hernandez said simply, and civil suits for all damages, including punitive damages and attorney's fees, which would likely exceed the amount we're asking for in settlement. Kevin leaned over to whisper with Mr. Watson. After a brief consultation, the attorney said, We need time to consider these terms and determine how my clients could possibly meet the financial obligations. You have until the end of business tomorrow, Ms. Hernandez replied. After that, we proceed with criminal complaints. Kevin's composure finally cracked. This is extortion. You're threatening us to get what you want. No, I said, speaking for the first time since they entered. This is justice. You stole from me, Kevin. You and Beth conspired to take my home, my money, and my possessions. You betrayed my trust in the worst possible way. These aren't threats. They're consequences. Kevin turned to Beth. Say something. This is your mother. Tell her we were just trying to save the business. Beth finally looked up, but not at Kevin. At me. Her eyes were hollow, her face drawn with what looked like genuine anguish. Mom, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. Don't say anything, Beth, Mr. Watson warned. Not here. But Beth ignored him. I'm sorry, Mom. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need to say it. I'm so sorry. Kevin stood abruptly. We're done here. We need to discuss this privately. Sit down, Kevin, Beth said, suddenly firm. I'm not finished. He stared at her in disbelief. What are you doing? What I should have done months ago. Telling the truth. She turned back to me, tears streaming down her face. It was Kevin's idea to forge the power of attorney. He said we needed it for the business loan paperwork, that it would just be a formality. But then the coffee shop started failing, and we were drowning in debt, and he said we could use the power of attorney to borrow from your accounts temporarily. Beth, stop talking, Kevin hissed. The deed was his idea too, she continued, as if she hadn't heard him. He said if we owned the house, we could take out a big enough loan to save the business and pay you back eventually. I knew it was wrong, but I was scared. We were going to lose everything. Your attorney advised you not to speak, Miss Hernandez reminded her. Beth shook her head. I don't care anymore. I can't keep lying. She looked directly at me. I don't expect forgiveness, Mom. What we did was unforgivable. But you should know that I never wanted to hurt you. I was weak and scared, and I let Kevin convince me this was our only option. Kevin's face contorted with rage. You're blaming me? This was a joint decision. You agreed to everything. Because you manipulated me, Beth shot back. just like you've been manipulating me for years, making me choose between you and my family, isolating me from my friends, convincing me that your big ideas would solve all our problems." The conference room fell silent as we all absorbed this unexpected turn. "I think we need a brief recess," Mr. Watson suggested, looking thoroughly uncomfortable with this public airing of his client's dirty laundry. "No," Beth said firmly. "I'm done with secrets and lies." She turned to Ms. Hernandez. "I'll sign whatever you want. I'll testify against Kevin if necessary. I just want this to be over." Kevin stood again, knocking his chair backwards. "You backstabbing bitch, after everything I've done for you." "Mr. Carter," Ms. Hernandez warned, "control yourself or I'll have security remove you." Kevin pointed a shaking finger at Beth. "You'll regret this. I promise you that." Then he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Mr. Watson sighed deeply. "Given this development, I'm not sure I can continue representing both clients. Mrs. Carter, do you wish to retain separate counsel?" Beth shook her head. "I just want to make things right. As much as possible, anyway." The meeting continued with Beth agreeing to all our terms and adding a few details of her own. A confession of exactly what had happened with each forged document, each unauthorized withdrawal, each stolen item. "I'll put Kevin's things in storage," she said, her voice hollow. "I can't go back to him after this. Not ever." As the meeting concluded, Beth asked if she could speak with me privately. After a moment's hesitation, I agreed. Michael and Jenny reluctantly left the room, followed by Ms. Hernandez and Mr. Watson. When we were alone, Beth seemed to collapse in on herself. "I don't know who I am anymore, Mom. I look in the mirror and I don't recognize the person looking back. How could I have done this to you? To us?" I didn't have an answer. Part of me wanted to comfort her as I had when she was small, to stroke her hair and tell her everything would be all right. Another part remained guarded, unwilling to risk more manipulation and betrayal. "I don't know, Beth. I've been asking myself the same question." "I know I have no right to ask anything of you," she said, wiping her eyes. "But I need help, professional help, to understand how I got here and make sure I never do anything like this again." It was the first sensible thing I'd heard her say in months. "That would be a good start," I agreed cautiously. "And I want you to know I'm going to pay you back. Every penny. It might take years, but I will. I promise." I nodded, not quite ready to believe any promises from her yet. "There's one more thing," she said hesitantly. "Kevin took your mother's jewelry. He sold most of it to a pawn shop downtown. I managed to buy back her wedding ring with my last paycheck from the accounting firm. I was going to try to sneak it back into your house without you knowing." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet box, sliding it across the table to me. Inside was my mother's gold wedding band, with its tiny row of diamond chips. Nothing valuable by modern standards, but priceless to me for its sentimental value. "Thank you," I said, my voice breaking slightly as I slipped the ring onto my finger for safekeeping. "What about the other items?" "I can tell you which pawn shop has what," she offered. "Some things might still be there." As we left the conference room, Beth hesitated in the doorway. "I know you can't forgive me right now, Mom. Maybe not ever. But I want you to know I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of being your daughter again." I didn't know what to say to that. The wound was still too fresh, the betrayal too profound. Instead, I simply nodded and watched her walk away, shoulders slumped in defeat, looking suddenly much older than her 42 years. The next morning, as I sat with Michael and Jenny at my kitchen table making lists of the missing items Beth had identified and the pawn shops where we might find them, my phone rang. It was Ms. Hernandez. "Mrs. Wilson, I have some interesting news. Kevin Carter came to my office this morning with his own attorney, not Mr. Watson. What did he want? I asked, putting the phone on speaker so Michael and Jenny could hear. He claims to have evidence that Beth was the mastermind behind the entire scheme. He's offering to testify against her in exchange for immunity from prosecution. That's ridiculous, Jenny exclaimed. After yesterday? My thoughts exactly, Ms. Hernandez agreed. But it gets more interesting. His new attorney let slip that Kevin has filed for divorce and frozen the joint assets he and Beth shared. What joint assets? Michael asked. I thought they were broke. Apparently not entirely. According to his attorney, they have an investment account with approximately $180,000 in it. I gasped. $180,000? Where did that money come from? That's what I'm trying to determine. The timing is suspicious. The account was opened 3 months ago, shortly after your initial investment in the coffee shop. My mind was racing. Could it be my money? The $70,000 I gave them for the business? Possibly. Or it could be proceeds from selling your possessions. Either way, I filed an emergency motion to freeze that account pending investigation. After hanging up, the three of us sat in stunned silence. They had $180,000 while claiming the business was failing, Jenny finally said. They must have been planning this from the beginning. Or Kevin was, Michael suggested. Maybe Beth wasn't lying about him manipulating her. I wasn't sure what to believe anymore, but the revelation about the hidden money lit a fire under our efforts to recover my stolen possessions. Over the next week, we visited every pawn shop Beth had listed, reclaiming what we could, some of my mother's jewelry, a few of Robert's rare books, the silver candlesticks that had been a wedding gift. Each recovered item felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, though many things were gone forever, already sold to unknown buyers or melted down for their precious metal content. Meanwhile, Ms. Hernandez's investigation into the mysterious investment account revealed a disturbing pattern. The account had been opened with a $60,000 deposit, close to the amount I had initially invested in the coffee shop, followed by smaller regular deposits that roughly matched the timeline of when items disappeared from my home. It appears Kevin never intended for the coffee shop to succeed, Ms. Hernandez explained during a conference call. Based on the financial records we've obtained, very little of your investment actually went into the business. Most was diverted to this hidden account. So the whole thing was a scam from the beginning? I asked, feeling sick. It looks that way. And Beth's role is still unclear. The account was in both their names, but all transactions were conducted by Kevin. What about the divorce he filed? Michael asked. That's where it gets even more interesting. He's claiming Beth committed financial fraud against him, not just you. He's trying to claim the entire investment account for himself. That's rich, Jenny scoffed. The con man claiming he was conned. Ms. Hernandez sounded grimly satisfied. It won't work. The judge has frozen the account pending criminal investigation. Neither of them can touch it. As the legal proceedings continued, I focused on rebuilding my life and my home. Friends and neighbors, hearing whispers of what had happened, rallied around me. Patricia organized a household shower where people brought small gifts to replace items that had been stolen, kitchen tools, decorative pieces, even plants for my garden. Michael and Jenny took turns staying with me, insisting I shouldn't be alone. I appreciated their concern, but sometimes I just wanted space to process everything that had happened. I'm not an invalid, I told them after a particularly hovering day. I can take care of myself. We know that, Mom, Jenny said gently, but you've been through a trauma. It's okay to lean on people who love you. She was right, of course. The betrayal had affected me more deeply than I wanted to admit. I found myself double-checking locked doors, hesitating before answering the phone, scanning my bank statements daily for any unexplained transactions. The sense of security I had once felt in my own home had been shattered. About 2 weeks after the confrontation at Ms. Hernandez's office, I received an unexpected visitor. It was James Watson, the attorney who had initially represented both Beth and Kevin. "Mrs. Wilson," he said when I answered the door, "I apologize for coming unannounced, but I have information I believe you should know." I invited him in cautiously, glad that Michael was in the house, though upstairs on a work call. "What information?" I asked once we were seated in the living room. "As you know, I no longer represent either Beth or Kevin Carter. Kevin has new counsel, and Beth has declined representation for the moment." He seemed uncomfortable, adjusting his glasses repeatedly. "When I took on their case, I was given incomplete information about the situation. Had I known the full extent of what occurred, I would never have agreed to represent them." "Why are you telling me this?" "Professional ethics," he said simply. "And because Beth came to me yesterday with documents she found in Kevin's home office after he moved out, documents I believe you should see." He handed me a folder. Inside were printouts of emails between Kevin and someone named Marcus, dating back almost a year, months before Beth had called me about investing in the coffee shop. As I read through them, my hands began to shake. The emails outlined a detailed plan to extract capital from me through a business venture that was designed to fail, followed by gaining control of my house through forged documents. One email from Kevin to Marcus, dated 2 weeks before Beth's initial phone call, read, "M is on board with the coffee shop idea. She doesn't suspect anything. Her mother has at least $100K in savings and a house worth $350K with no mortgage. Once we get the initial investment, we'll start the process of gaining control of the rest. Should be complete within 6 months." "M is Beth?" I asked, looking up at Mr. Watson. He nodded grimly. "It appears so, but the emails suggest she wasn't aware of the full plan. Kevin refers to keeping M in the dark about Phase 2 and only telling her what she needs to know." I continued reading, feeling increasingly ill. The emails described how Kevin had researched my finances, my habits, even my relationships with my children to determine how best to manipulate me. "Where did Beth find these?" I asked. "In a hidden folder on Kevin's laptop. She was looking for divorce information and found them by accident. She brought them to me because she wasn't sure who else to trust." "Why not bring them directly to me, or to Ms. Hernandez?" Mr. Watson adjusted his glasses again. "She's afraid, Mrs. Wilson, not just of Kevin, but of the consequences she still faces. These emails suggest she was at least partially a victim herself, but they don't exonerate her completely." I sat back, trying to process this new information. The emails painted a picture of Kevin as a calculated con man who had targeted me specifically, using Beth as an unwitting accomplice at first, then coercing her into more active participation as the scheme progressed. "There's one more thing," Mr. Watson added. "Beth authorized me to tell you that she's entered a residential treatment program for depression and codependency. She left yesterday for a 30-day program." That explained why she hadn't delivered these documents herself. "Thank you for bringing this to me," I said, still processing everything. After Mr. Watson left, I called Michael downstairs and showed him the emails. "This changes things," he said, after reading them. "Not completely, but it does put Beth's actions in a different light." "She still participated," I pointed out. "She still lied to me, took my money, tried to take my house." "Yes," he agreed. "But it looks like she might have been caught in Kevin's web just like you were. The question is, what do you want to do with this information? What did I want? Justice, certainly. My money and possessions returned, absolutely. But did I want my daughter to face criminal charges if she had been manipulated and coerced? That was a much harder question to answer. The emails Mr. Watson provided became crucial evidence in the legal proceedings that followed. Ms. Hernandez immediately forwarded them to the district attorney, who opened a criminal investigation focusing primarily on Kevin. These emails show clear premeditation and intent to defraud, she explained. They changed the narrative significantly. Within days, Kevin was arrested on multiple charges including elder abuse, fraud, forgery, and identity theft. His new attorney attempted to negotiate a plea deal, offering full cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. He's willing to provide details about where all the money went, Ms. Hernandez told us, including items he sold that we haven't been able to trace yet. What about Beth? I asked. Where does this leave her legally? That's complicated, Ms. Hernandez admitted. The emails suggest she was not the mastermind, but she still participated in criminal acts. The DA is considering reduced charges in exchange for her testimony against Kevin, but much depends on what you want, Mrs. Wilson. I thought about Beth, now in a treatment center facing her own demons, the daughter who had hurt me so deeply, but might have been another victim of Kevin's manipulation. I need time to think about it, I told Ms. Hernandez. Meanwhile, the investigation into the mysterious $180,000 investment account revealed even more shocking information. Kevin had been running similar schemes before, targeting older women with assets, using charm and false business opportunities to gain access to their funds. 2 other victims came forward after seeing his arrest reported in the local news. He's a career con man, the detective assigned to the case explained during a meeting at the police station. He moves from town to town, finding vulnerable targets through church groups, community centers, even dating apps for older adults. And Beth? Jenny asked. Did she know about his history? We're still determining that, the detective said. But based on the evidence so far, it appears she was initially unaware of his past or his true intentions with your mother. That changed over time, of course, as she became more involved in the scheme. The court froze all of Kevin's assets, including the investment account he had tried to claim solely for himself in the divorce filing. Forensic accountants traced much of the money directly back to me, both my initial investment in the coffee shop and proceeds from selling my stolen possessions. Miss Hernandez filed motions to have those funds returned to me, a process that would take time but seemed almost certain to succeed, given the mounting evidence against Kevin. As for the coffee shop itself, it was a hollow shell. An inspection revealed that most of the expensive equipment had been leased, not purchased, and was now being repossessed due to missed payments. The business licenses were not properly filed, health code violations had accumulated, and suppliers were demanding payment for outstanding invoices. It was never meant to be a legitimate business, Michael observed, as we drove past the now shuttered storefront. Just a front to get your money. After 3 weeks of intensive investigation, the district attorney presented us with options regarding Beth. With her cooperation and testimony, they had enough evidence to put Kevin away for a significant time. The question was what charges, if any, would be pursued against Beth. Given her cooperation, her lack of prior criminal history, and the evidence suggesting she was manipulated by Kevin, we could consider a plea agreement, the DA explained. Community service, probation, and restitution rather than jail time. But we want your input, Mrs. Wilson, as the primary victim. I had spent weeks wrestling with this question. Part of me still felt deeply betrayed by Beth, regardless of Kevin's manipulation. Another part remembered the daughter I had raised, who had shown genuine remorse and was now seeking help for her issues. If she completes the treatment program, makes full restitution, and performs community service working with other victims of financial abuse, I won't object to keeping her out of jail, I said finally. Michael and Jenny exchanged glances, clearly surprised by my decision. "Are you sure, Mom?" Michael asked later when we were alone. "After everything she did?" "I'm not doing it for her," I explained. "I'm doing it for me. Sending my daughter to prison won't heal the hurt or bring back what was lost.